John sat silently in the train carriage, eyes fixed on the window, though his thoughts drifted somewhere between deep regret and fragile hope. That very morning he had walked out of prisoner's home for nearly 10 years. After one devastating mistake that changed the course of his life forever, his time behind bars hadn't just been measured by cold steel and concrete walls, but by quiet suffering, restless nights, and long days haunted by the same thought: if only, before everything fell apart, John had lived an ordinary life. A small house, a kind-hearted wife, and peaceful evenings spent on the porch, watching the sun go down. But one moment of anger, one reckless act had destroyed all of it. His family broke. The trust of the woman who once loved him was lost, and he descended into a darkness that felt absolute. In prison, John made no excuses. He didn't blame others. Instead, he turned inward, reflecting, repenting, and searching for meaning in a place that rarely offered any. He kept a journal, read endlessly, and prayed quietly, holding onto one thin thread: redemption. Deep within, he carried one single hope: not to erase the past, but to show that he wasn't the same man anymore. He knew he couldn't undo the pain, but maybe, just maybe, he could still make things right. All he needed was a sign, a sliver of grace, a simple message that said, "You're still worth forgiving." As the day of his release drew near, John wasn't filled with excitement but fear. The world outside had changed, and so had he. But would anyone believe that? Most of all would she. His former wife was the one he had hurt most. Her silent tears on the day of his sentencing haunted him more than the prison walls ever could. Over the years he had written her many letters, most of which he never sent. But one letter, his final one, he did. It was brief, sincere, and trembling with vulnerability. "I'm not asking you to wait. I don't expect your forgiveness. But if there's still a place for me in your life, even a small part, please tie a yellow ribbon on the old oak tree in front of our house. I'll be passing by on a train this Friday. If I see it, I'll get off. If not, I'll keep going. You'll never hear from me again." He had mailed that letter weeks ago. Now, sitting on the train, he was just minutes away from his answer. His hands trembled, his breathing shallow. He couldn't bring himself to look out the window. The moment of truth was near, and it was both terrifying and beautiful. To place your heart in someone else's hands and pray they still remembered how to hold it gently. Outside, the landscape blurred as the train rumbled forward, approaching the small town John had once called home. With every mile, his chest grew tighter. He tried to calm himself, but the fear of what he might or might not see was overwhelming. In the seat beside him sat two older men and a woman, strangers who had noticed the anxiety in his eyes, the way he clenched his hands. One of them leaned in kindly. Heading home, John nodded hesitantly, then quietly shared his story, just the short version. The prison, the letter, the yellow ribbon. He ended with a whisper: "I can't bring myself to look. If it's not there, I don't know what I'll do." A long silence followed. Then the older man beside him offered gently, "Then let me look for you." John said nothing, just nodded, eyes fixed to the floor. The minutes stretched endlessly. All he could hear was the hum of the train and the pounding of his heart. Then the train began to slow. Familiar sights came into view: old fences, winding streets, the curve in the tracks he knew by memory. And then, the tree, the air in the carriage, grew still, heavy with tension. The man beside him leaned closer to the window, then gasped, his voice low, full of wonder: "Son, you'd better look." John slowly turned his head, and what he saw took the breath from his lungs. The oak tree wasn't tied with just one ribbon, it was covered in them. Dozens, maybe hundreds, yellow ribbons, fluttering in the breeze like a silent song of grace. For a long moment, John couldn't move. The ribbons danced in the wind, glowing gold against the fading afternoon sun. They weren't just strips of cloths, they were a message louder than words. "You're still loved, you're still welcome. Come home." Tears filled his eyes. He didn't stop them. The train crept into the small station just beyond the tree. Without a word, John rose, legs shaking beneath him. The other passengers watched silently, many visibly moved by what they had just witnessed. The man who had helped him placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go on," he said with a gentle smile. "Looks like someone's been waiting a long time." John stepped off the train and onto the platform. He took a deep breath, and there, beyond the tree full of ribbons, stood a woman. Older now but familiar. Her eyes found his, soft and full of tears. No words were needed. He walked toward her, every step a release from the guilt, every heartbeat a return to something he thought he'd lost forever. Some stories don't end with fireworks, just a simple truth. Sometimes, love really does wait. And when it does, it leaves a ribbon on a tree.